Yeah, this afternoon we're discussing with uh, Barrister Emmanuel Ogebe. And Emmanuel Ogebe has been in the news for a very long time for those who who have been interested or who have been aware of the fights that he had against the Abacha regime and his trip to the US, where he has remained there up to this time. We are discussing why he is doing what he's doing. What are the things that motivate him? Ogebe, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, the first question I want to ask you is a simple one. How and why did tell us the story of why you left Nigeria abruptly for the US?
That's a good one. But I think I can say that the big factor that led to my departure was my encounter with the brutal regime of General Abacha. As a young lawyer practicing in Abuja, uh, I was really struck one day when I realized that a prisoner had been released and become a president in South Africa. Meanwhile, somebody who had become a president in Nigeria had become a prisoner. I'm of course referring to Mandela's exit and his prison to presidency, and Abiola's misfortune from presidency to prison. And I felt Nigeria was going in the wrong direction, and I wanted to see Nigeria go in the right direction. And so I committed a lot of my practice to human rights and pro democracy activism. And that landed me in General Abacha's Gulag. So the long and short of it was after my release, a year after my release, I went on exile to the United States because I was still being trailed and prosecuted and sought by the brutal regime.
The popular story is that you fax a seditious statement, you use a fax machine, and you were traced and arrested.
Well,
What really happened?
so here's the thing. I had issued press statements regularly on the situation in Nigeria. I had met with different international contact groups or fact-finding groups that came, including United Nations, American Baptists, different groups. And unfortunately, one of the Americans warned me, actually phoned me on a landline because there were no cell phones in those days, to tell me that I should be careful. That one of their colleagues, when they were meeting with Abacha, said, Abacha, we just met with a Nigerian lawyer at our hotel who told us that all you're saying about human rights, your respect for human rights is false. And by saying that, that person had put me on the radar of Abacha. Now, what precisely happened was when Kudirat Abiola was assassinated, I issued a press statement, uh, and I actually wrote a direct letter to the president. It was an open letter, and I said, condolences on the loss of a prominent Nigerian citizen. The insecurity warrants that a judicial panel of inquiry should be established to find out the basis of her death. Then I said something which probably was the issue that got Abacha. I said this issue shows more the need for us to address the underlying problem of June 12. I said you had the courage to address the issue of the Sultan of Sokoto, and that's an issue that affects a limited number of Nigerians. If you could resolve the leadership of the Sultanate, you also have the capacity to resolve the leadership of our democracy, which affects all of us. And so I distributed it to the press and I faxed the copy to the State House because it was a letter to the president. People write letters to the president all the time, except this man was a madman. So what happened, and I'm giving you precise details, is after I sent the fax at Nitel, I was about to pay for it and realized I didn't have my wallet. So I told the people, don't worry, tomorrow I'll bring your money. And I left. Unknown to me, Major Mustafa was given a copy of the fax. He was angry and he said they should go and pick this person. They traced the fax to Nitel, went to Nitel and packed the Nitel staff. So the GM of Nitel said, you can't blame them. their job is to send faxes. They didn't write it. So they asked them, do they know the person who did this? They said, no, they don't. But one of them now said, the man didn't pay for the fax, and he said he will come back tomorrow to pay for it. So the military personnel insulted them. Are you people stupid? How will a Nigerian who has gotten something for free from the government come back to pay for it? You people are mad. And they released them. And the next day, I was on my way to my chambers. I said, no, let me go and pay this thing. So I got there and I said, here is your money. And I noticed that the people were shaking. And they now said, oh, there's no change. I knew something was wrong. One of the people got up and went out and came back, like there's no change. I said, all right, keep the change. They said, you cannot go, sir. So I just said something to them in Igbo. I served in Igbo land, so I could understand the language. So I now said in Igbo, so you're about to betray me? And the woman was shocked and turned to her colleague and said, is he one of us? At that point, I went to the door. And as I opened the door, I saw a swarm of people coming. And so the man introduced himself that he's the general manager and I am wanted upstairs now. So they took me to the office. So the man said, did I send a fax from here? I said, yes, I did. Who did I send it to? I said, I sent it to the president. So he said, well, the military people came yesterday and rounded up his staff and interrogated them. And he had to beg that they should be released, that they are not the ones who wrote the fax. So he has now called the villa that they should come and get me. So, long story short, the military goons arrived from the villa, and the general manager said to them, he said, officers, I just want to tell you, please consider this, that this man is a gentleman. There's no way we would have traced him, and he had gotten away free with the service. But he honored his word and came back. So please just bear that in mind. The officer just ignored him and told them to carry me. And that's how I was taken and driven to the presidential villa. The interesting thing is, when we got to the gate of the villa, they have a manifest and all of that. So they now said, is my name on the manifest? They said, no, that is a prisoner they just captured. So they said they should bring me out, let them torture me. They said, no, not yet, that Oga wants him urgently, let them take me. And I was taken in. Now, here's what's interesting. At that time, as a young lawyer in Abuja, I had many clients, including in the villa. My name was on the manifest multiple times when I was coming to see clients in the villa. And that day, I was entering that villa as an invisible man. My name was not there. I was entering as a prisoner. So that is the brief summary of what happened.
So what happened when they took you into the villa?
That's a good question. Well, there's not enough time in the day, but I will tell you that I was in 2014 or 2015, I went to the villa. I was invited to meet with the Vice President of Nigeria. So I went, and as I was walking into the Vice President's office, I recognized one of the rooms where I was tortured. And I was tortured in 3 different locations in 3 different times. And I remember the kind of torture that happened in each location. And my torture in Aguda House, because I will never forget, there was a glass table. They so beat me, I landed on the glass table and smashed it. And they used pins to prick me in my private part. And so as I was entering, I said to myself, I said, see the people who are enjoying the democracy. They don't know that my blood was spilled in this very room. And that's part of the irony of what is happening now. The president of Nigeria was a member of NADICO. We were in the movement together. And then you see some of the things he's doing. Like just now, state of emergency in Rivers.
Okay, we'll come to that.
Okay.
But let's talk about.
Yeah.
You said you were tortured in one place.
Mm-hmm.
They tortured you. They were pricking you with pins. What other thing did they do?
Well, I mean, interrogation and all of that,
What were they asking you? What did they want to know?
So the week that this happened was the week of June 12th. So they were asking, what are activists planning? What is going on? Is this? I said, I don't know what's going on. All I know is I am, fasting. I'm doing a 1 week fast for Nigeria. And they said it's a lie. I'm on a hunger strike. This is, I said, well, that's your own conclusion. So, but some of the questions were very stupid questions. One of them was, have you been to America? What has that got to do with anything? But I think they were trying to find out if I was sponsored by the Americans. Now, fortunately for me, at that point, I hadn't been to America, so that wasn't necessarily the objective. But I'll tell you, by the time they investigated and they found out my familial connection, because I was being interrogated by a panel of 7, and one of them, unfortunately, was from my state and apparently had attended the same church as us. So he recognized my name. So he asked me, are you related to Justice Ogebe? I said, yes. He said, in the biodata you filled, you said your father is a preacher. Is he not a justice? I said, well, he preaches too. And after that revelation, I think the torture stopped. I'm not sure, but at least the interrogations reduced. And I never saw that man again. I later on found out that because my family were searching for me, I just disappeared from the surface of the earth. They searched in the DSS dungeon, they didn't find me, nothing. And I later on found out that ultimately that man was contacted. And he told them that, yes, I was in the villa. But I think what happened is that as soon as the other interrogators found out that that man knew me, they took him off the case. Who knows? So that was part of the experience.
How did you get out?
Well, long story, but I will try and be brief. Let me just mention that after they found out, my pedigree and all of that, they kind of changed that. They stopped the torture. And they actually said to me one day, look, you are from the north. You are an intelligent lawyer. We can use people like you. Don't support this nonsense Lagos Ibadan activists. So they tried to, woo me that way, which of course I declined. I was ultimately moved from the villa to a prison, police station in the town. And so there I was able to, my family and others were able to access me. So I was detained for several months. What ultimately led to my release, ironically, is that Nigeria was playing in the '96 Olympics. General Abacha wanted our soccer team to win because, as dictators, the only thing that takes people's mind of their misery is soccer success. And so he asked his mullahs what sadaka he could do so that Nigeria would win. And they said he should reduce some of his prisoners. We were 4 state house prisoners in that prison, and Abacha decided to release 2. Now, on that Sunday, the Sunday, one Sunday in my captivity, I had a divine visitation where the Lord told me that my term was for 2 months. That's the first time in my life where I can say God audibly told me something. My term was for 2 months. And as a lawyer, I understood the use of the word term. A term is a defined period of time or prison sentence. Political prisoners have no defined period of time. They were not put there by court. So God wanted me to understand that 2 months is it. So I calculated, I was picked up first week of August. So 2 months would be, first week of June. 2 months would be first week of August. And do you know, this visitation was on Sunday night. On Friday, a letter came from Abacha for the list of state house prisoners. And our 4 names were sent. By Friday night, the letter came from Abacha, 2 of us should be released. And that was how I came.
So from there, how did you decide to go to America?
That's a good question. Again, there's just so much. There's no time to do this. But after my release from prison, I decided to go to England for a break and to recover. And just before I left, some of my dad's friends in the US sent a message that if I can get a US visa, I should come on exile there till the regime was over. So I decided to get the visa. I got it. I got to England. I called them. I said, I'm here. I'm ready to come. And they said, well, you can only come on the condition that you renounce your opposition to Abacha. And I thought about it for a week. I told them, I said, well, you people live in a democracy that you're enjoying. So are you saying that we Africans are consigned only to dictatorship? I will not accept such a condition. They said, in that case, I can't come. I said, no problem. So I went back to Nigeria. And a lot of people were shocked that I came back because, haven't left, why come back to the place where persecuted? I stayed in Nigeria for about a year. Unfortunately, one of the state house prisoners who was not released with us escaped from the prison. Because I met him there and I left him there. So it now dawned on him that there was no hope for him. So he took matters into his own and escaped. So one of the guards who I had helped with his school fees traced me and told me that, look, that man has escaped and that they're going to come after me because they are sure that I was close to him and I will assist him. So I had to last minute just pick up. In fact, I think I left with the clothes on my back and one or two and jet out of the country.
You went to UK or US?
Well, what is interesting is that I went through multiple countries. Given my profile and everything, I ended up going to Benin and Togo and Ghana and UK. Do you know the way God works? You see, God is a miracle working God. Do you know that I ended up in UK at the border post and the immigration officer stopped me? Now, I had worked with the UK High Commission to obtain a student visa. And so they looked at it, they said, oh, they called my school that I hadn't paid my fees, so my admission had lapsed. So now they can't let me into the country. So she said she was going to call and find out how I got this visa. So she called the High Commission in Abuja. And by the time she came back, she said, well, apparently you have friends in high places. That the consular officer told her that it was the High Commissioner who recommended me for that visa. So I was detained by immigration for several hours. Finally, the immigration officer came to me. She said, look, I don't know what to do. She said, I can't let you in and I can't send you back. I've been told that it will spark an international incident if I send you back to that country. You see, because under international law, you cannot send a dissident back to the country where he was being persecuted. So she said, what do I do? And this is this is the way God works. That my captor was asking me for advice. So I told her, I said, well, if you will not let me into your country, then let me go to a country that actually believes in democracy. She said, what do I mean? I said, let me go to the United States. She said, do you have a US visa? I said, yes. She checked. My visa was about to expire in the next few weeks. My US visa, remember I obtained it since the previous year. She went and talked to her bosses. They said, fine. They checked for the next flight to US. There were only 2 flights remaining going to New York. That's how they put me on the plane. I bought my ticket and I left. And that's how I ended up in America. Now, as we speak now, I've brought almost 30 people to America who are now citizens, married, whatever. Among these are the Chibok girls, different people. And I think back now to the way I came, and I know it was only God who redirected my steps.
That brings me to the question. You mentioned the Chibok girls. You were involved. Before we get to that, part of the work you've been doing is in the US is to do advocacy for Nigerians who, and people in Africa who
Yes.
have been under pressure
Yes.
in terms of their religious freedom.
Yes.
What are the outstanding issues there that you've had to deal with?
Yes. So Nigeria is one of the most underreported and underrecognized um, places of persecution for Christians in the world. At the time I got to the US, many people did not know what was happening in Nigeria. Now, at that time, our focus was on democracy and the Ogoni movement and all of that. And we all pitched in together as activists to work on those issues, believing that once democracy came in, we would have a bigger, a greater ability to address other secondary issues. Unfortunately, I see a Nigeria now that is way worse than what we could have believed or imagined even back then.
What are the things that you are talking about in that regard?
Now, Nigeria has been the deadliest place in the world for Christians for the past 13 out of 14 years. Okay? This means that more Christians are killed in Nigeria each year than the rest of the world combined. Now, the only time in the 14-year period that we've been recording data where this changed or this Nigeria didn't take the lead was in Syria. I believe that was in 2014 or so. And this is a terrible statistic to have. In Nigeria, on average, every 2 hours, a Christian is killed. Whether it is from Boko Haram in insurgency or from Fulani militancy. These are the unfortunate statistics out there. So Nigeria is currently the most deadly place in the world to be a Christian.
Yeah, some people dispute those figures. They said that there's no way to verify them.
Well, that is an unfortunate argument to make because the data has been tracked for a long time. But we started tracking specific global percentages in 2012. That's when we started. And the funny thing is that I was studying the research data with my team in the US, and we noticed that pattern. And then that same year, Open Doors, which has aggregated this data for over 50 years and only started checking global percentages, came to the same conclusion. So my team in the US and a team in Europe both found or discovered the same fact in 2012. So the data is there. It's not. I don't know how you want to dispute the data that has been collated and is established.
How come this type of news has not been, the world does not seem to be noticing?
Yeah, and that's a very valid question. I'll tell you something that shocked me. Last month, I was reading a page from Billy Graham's autobiography, Just As I Am. Billy Graham said that he came to Kaduna and that he met with a Muslim leader there. And that Muslim leader told him that they were going to wipe out the Christians in a short while. Now, this book was written over 60 years ago. That means that somebody as influential as Billy Graham had been told what was going to happen to Christians in Nigeria. As I'm talking to you, Billy Graham's humanitarian organization, Samaritan's Purse, is not assisting Nigerian Christians.
Why?
You see, there are a lot of reasons, but I will narrow them down to 3. One is that Nigeria is a difficult place to work in, whether for whatever business or sector, because of the infrastructure challenges, the fraud and all of that. So most people would rather work easily in an easy environment. I know a prominent West European persecution organization. Their Africa office is in South Africa. There's no religious persecution in South Africa, but they would rather live in an easy environment than here. The second reason is very sad. And the reason is that in southern Nigeria, there's religious freedom, there's revival, big meetings, going on crusades, 500,000 people will show up. So the perception that the average American has is that Christianity is booming in Nigeria. What are they talking about? So you have Nigerian American pastors who will fly in private jets to Lagos to go and preach at camp, at camp convention. And when he's leaving, he's giving honorarium in a bag of dollars. And that man feels like, these Africans are rich, Nigeria is rich, and these Christians are free. So he doesn't know the reality of what is happening in northern Nigeria. I will tell you quickly something that happened. A CAN official came to Washington.
A CAN, that is?
The Christian Association of Nigeria. And we were preparing a meeting for him with a senator. The senator's chief of staff called and said, they are not sure they will take this meeting, that they just did an online search on CAN, and the president of CAN has a private jet, so they will not take this meeting. So I had to tell him, I said, please, this is not the president of CAN. This man is from this north of Nigeria where they're very poor and where they're being killed. So you cannot use the paintbrush to say you will not meet. That's the only way we were able to save that meeting. So the impression of Southern Nigerian Christianity and prosperity is creating the wrong perception of what is happening in Northern Nigeria. And then I think the final point I'll make as to why that is the case is that Southern Nigerians constitute generally 90% of Nigerians in diaspora that you see in the US. And a lot of them don't know the reality of what is happening in Northern Nigeria. So we had a situation where we would engage with Congress and tell them what is happening. Congress members will go to their constituency and they will say, Nigerians say, oh, we were told what is happening in your country. And the Nigerian from the south will say, what? Nothing like that. So it's a very difficult situation that needs to be addressed.
Okay, now let's go back to, you mentioned the issue of Chibok girls. Let's have your take. There was a time you had some challenges, between you and the Minister of Women Affairs over custody of the Chibok girls.
Yes.
What really happened?
Well, so here's what is very interesting. When I was preparing to take a few of them to the US to school, because we found them dejected and neglected after their experience. Most of them said they will never go back to school again. Boko Haram told them if they go to school, they will kill them the next time. We reached out to the government of Nigeria and we said, we have found a school that is willing to take all of the 50 escaped girls and train them. And the government declined for two reasons. One, they felt the girls were not ready for international exposure. But secondly, they were embarrassed by the whole situation and they didn't want the girls to be seen by the world. So we didn't know these were the real reasons at the time. And so we decided, all right, if we can't do the 50, we'll just do 5. And we decided to focus on the ones that we met with visiting US delegations who we felt, may be at risk if it was known that they had met with international delegations. So we sponsored 5 through private efforts to the US. After we did that, like wildfire, others wanted to come. A fake one even applied where we discovered late and we sacked her. But we now felt, well, at least she had a desire to be educated. This is what prompted her to do this. Let's help her find a school in Nigeria and pay for her. And we did that. So we ended up taking 10 ultimately. All of this happened under the Jonathan administration. And towards the end of Jonathan's administration, they reached out to me and said, look, we want to claim credit for sponsoring these girls abroad so we can use it as our campaign effort.
When you said they, who in particular?
Well, if a federal commissioner under Jonathan met with
commissioner of what?
I don't want to specify the agency, but they had control of funds that had been established. I think it was the Safe Schools Initiative or something. And they said, They met with me and they said, look, we will take over and fund the girls' education, but give us the credit that we are the ones who did. And I'll be candid with you. You are, a government, you've been in government here in the system. They told me that the president had seen one of the girls on CNN speaking eloquently like an American. He was so impressed and he wanted to identify. So I said to them, I said, no, I don't think I will accept, your offer. Rather, I want you to first visit the US, see the girls before you make that offer. So it was scheduled that they would, when the president came, he would see them. But because of elections, he never came and he lost. Now, the Buhari regime came in, and I mentioned how I had a meeting with the vice president. I had a meeting with the vice president in April.
Which vice president?
Buhari's vice president, and I briefed him on
April
of 2015.
Okay.
I briefed him.
That was 2015.
No, 2016.
Okay.
2016. I briefed him. I said, these girls were here on a 2-year visa. They have finished their 2 years. They haven't graduated to the level that we want. Can you people take over and assist them? And he told me no, that rather I should go and do an endowment or a launch and raise money that way, that they will contribute. So I told him, I said, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and that was the time I told you I saw the place where I was tortured. That's where we had the meeting. I said, Mr. Vice President, the last time I was in this villa, I met with the former president and I asked him to do an endowment for victims of terror. He created the Victim Support Fund. And I tell you that fund ran, and all the victims of terror I referred to them, not a single one was attended to. So I said, sir, I'm not going to do that again. So that was how the meeting ended. And I left. This was April 2016. In May of 2016, I got a call from somebody in one of the ministries and said that the NTA just announced that the Minister of Women's Affairs has revoked my guardianship of the Chibok girls. And it was announced on NTA. I said, I've not been informed. And I said, she doesn't have the power to revoke a guardianship she never gave me. And I said, I'm waiting to be contacted. Long story short, these evil people went and procured $1 million and gave to Aisha Mustafa Oyebode or something.
The Minister of Women Affairs, Aisha Al-Hassan.
No. Aisha Al-Hassan was the Minister of Women Affairs. But they conspired and provided $1 million to Aisha Mutala Oyebode to go to the US and collect the girls. Okay? So she went to the US and spread money around and everything, and they packed some of the girls. So that was what happened.
What do you mean by they packed?
They packed some of the girls. They literally. Look, this country is demented.
No, they packed. Where are the girls now?
Let me go back to 2016. So, one of the two of the girls were in their school. They had their end of year, graduation ceremonies and so on and so forth. And we were at the school attending it when a vehicle arrived and to pick the girls. Meanwhile, the girls had told me that they wanted to come to my house. They were staying with an American family, in the richest part of Washington, D.C. The house they were staying in was a $2 million home. So the girls had told me that on so and so day, they want to come to my house and pick some of their things. I said, no problem. So we were there. When the car came that wanted to pick them, I said, you said we're going to my house. Who is this coming to pick you? So the person came, I brought out my camera, I was recording him. He was saying I should stop recording him. I said, what do you mean? Who are you? He said he's from Homeland Security. I said, if you're from Homeland Security, you know that I have a constitutional right to record you. So why are you trying to stop me from recording? I'm not going to stop recording. So he was not taking the girl. So I told the school authorities to call 911, call the police. So by the time the police arrived, he had left. But we got the license plate number. So we now gave the police. The police put out a all points bulletin, helicopters, everything. They traced the man, stopped him on the way. Later on, I got the police report and I saw. And they say, so the man, he said he's from Homeland Security. And he said, why are you here? Why did you pick up girls from the school? He said he's on national security assignment. They say you can't say that. We are the police here. If you have an operation in our jurisdiction, you let us know. And you say, give us the name of your supervisor. So they called Homeland Security, who now confirmed that he was an official, and before they released him. So from there, they took the girls to the house where they lived, and they packed their load. They had 8 suitcases of belongings. These are girls who came with nothing to America, and they took them away. Long story short, one of those girls has converted to Islam. They moved them to New York. They were living in a ghetto called the Bronx. And when she saw how they were betrayed by the Buhari regime and everything, they left a glorious, wealthy life of, poverty and whatever. She attempted suicide. But to the glory of God, she recovered, and she just graduated last year. Now, the Chibok girls who didn't follow, Aisha Oyebuni and all, they graduated, was it 2018?
How many of them?
Virtually, I don't know. Virtually, as I'm talking to you now, of the 10 Chibok girls that I specifically brought to the US, I think 9 out of 10 of them have graduated. But the ones who went with Aisha and all of that, all graduated later than the ones who did not. So the gap is so bad, from between 1 to 5 year gap. People who were excellent
So
classmates.
you are saying the government was more interested with those who had already gone to US. They didn't bother about those who remain in Nigeria.
Exactly. And
so you don't have any
sense.
information about those that remain in Nigeria?
Well, those that remained in Nigeria, a lot of them, couldn't cope well. Some went back to marry. A lot of them are still a lot of them are still in school. They haven't made significant progress. So it's a mixed bag. But the girls in the US, as I'm talking to you now, some have reached master's level. One obtained a PhD last year. The one that obtained PhD last year didn't come, wasn't one of the ones I brought. She actually, went to school here, finished her secondary, and then came to US.
Yes.
And completed up to a PhD. So the bottom line is, this is the kind of nonsensical, and again, this was purely, this Islamic agenda. How can you take a girl who ran away from Boko Haram in Nigeria, who came to America, and then she converts to Islam in New York? Does that even make any sense to you? So, long story short is I ultimately ended up suing the Nigerian government for defamation, and the case is still in court.
Okay, let me ask you as we try to round up.
Yeah.
What are the high points and low points of your years of struggle?
That's a very good question. Well, I would say for me, a very emotional visit for me was when I came to Nigeria. I believe it was 2001, and we were invited to meet with President Obasanjo at the presidential villa, and we were to have breakfast with him. And when we got to the villa, when we were having breakfast, it was a delegation of American businessmen and myself and Honorable Benila. And for no reason, Obasanjo looked at me. I'd never met him before that day, and said, "Emmanuel, pray for our food." Honestly, it was so emotional for me, because the last time I had been in that villa, I was a prisoner. That's how powerful God is.
And the low points.
Well, do I want to say it was when my lawyers found documents from the Nigerian embassy asking that my Nigerian passport should be revoked because of my advocacy for human rights in Nigeria in the US Congress. That I mean, this is a country that you sacrificed everything. So that might be a low point. Or was it, the betrayal of the girls that we took from the forest of Zambisa, brought them to America, gave them a new life, changed their destiny, and Buhari government bribed them with iPads and phones to turn against us, So, yeah, I think that would be one of the really low points. But in a human rights career of over 30 years, it's difficult to choose what is high, what is low.
So at the end, let me just go back. How many of the girls that you did, out of the 10 girls that you took, the government took away how many?
Out of the 10 girls, I think the government took 7.
Okay, the 3 that remained with you all graduated?
Yes, they all graduated. Everybody, yeah. The funny thing is, even the 7 that the government took, 2 immediately escaped from the government.
And came back to you?
No, and went to another white guy.
Yes.
Yeah. And so 5, remained with the government, and those were the ones who were lagging behind for years. And it was only last year
that they graduated.
That's 2000 and last. So basically on the 10th anniversary, meanwhile there are colleagues that started graduating since 2018.
Oh well, we have been speaking with Emmanuel Ogebe, a human rights activist, very passionate man who worked to ensure that the Chibok girls got a relief. And Emmanuel, thank you very much for the opportunity to explain to us. We'll keep talking. You're welcome.
All right, thank you.